Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hidden Archives. In this video, I will be discussing my paper, Nakedness, Necessity, and Republican Virtue, Bodily, Modesty, and Class Culture in the Continental Army. In this paper, I examine a lesser-known but revealing tension within the Continental Army during the American War of Independence, conflicting ideas about bodily modesty, class culture, and Republican identity. Rather than treating modesty as a timeless moral absolute, this study argues that attitudes toward nudity, bathing, and bodily exposure in the Continental Army functioned as a social code shaped by class, gender, and necessity. These tensions illuminate how revolutionary leadership sought to discipline not just soldiers' behavior, but the symbolic body of the new republic itself. 18th century America did not possess a single standard of bodily decorum. As historian Kathleen Brown demonstrates in her book Foul Bodies, elite Americans increasingly linked bodily restraint with moral authority and social hierarchy, even as older practices persisted well into the Revolutionary period. For working class and rural populations, who were the primary sources of Continental soldiers, public bathing, communal labor, and limited privacy were ordinary facts of life rather than markers of indecency. These divergent norms collided in military camps. Soldiers bathed collectively, washed clothing, and shared river spaces, and often lacked sufficient garments to avoid public exposure. Such behavior reflected continuity with civilian working-class life rather than moral disorder. Yet, officers trained in Enlightenment ideals of refinement interpreted these practices as threats to discipline and reputation. No figure exemplifies this concern more clearly than George Washington. His general orders repeatedly framed modesty not as private morality but as public image. In August 1775, Washington condemns soldiers bathing naked near bridges visible to civilians and ladies of the first fashion, not because bathing itself was immoral, but because visibility endangered the Army's respectability. Washington's rules of civility further reveal his belief that bodily discipline was inseparable from civic virtue. Historians such as Carolyn Cox have emphasized that officers and enlisted men inhabited profoundly different moral worlds. Memoirs by officers like Alexander Graydon reveal deep class prejudice that often misread cultural difference as moral failing. At the same time, material realities made elite standards difficult to enforce. Chronic clothing shortages forced soldiers to wash and wear garments in rotation, making public undress unavoidable. Foreign observers confirmed this reality. Johann Ewald, a Hessian officer, described American soldiers marching nearly naked, sustained not by discipline alone but by ideological commitment to liberty. His account underscores a key paradox. Bodily disorder coexisted with remarkable military endurance. The presence of women in camp further complicates modesty regulations. Holly Mayer's foundational work on camp followers demonstrates that women were indispensable, serving as laundresses, nurses, and cooks, even as officers viewed their presence as a moral liability. Laundry work in particular required intimate proximity to male bodies, blurring boundaries elites tried unsuccessfully to enforce. These modesty disputes also distinguished the Continental Army from local militias. Militias remained embedded with civilian culture, while the Continental Army aspired to professional and symbolic national status. As Mark Edward Linder and James Kirby Martin argue, discipline became central to Republican ideology itself. Regulating bodies was therefore a political act. The soldier's appearance signified the legitimacy of the revolutionary cause. Ultimately, as John Shai has observed, the Revolutionary Army reshaped identity under pressure. Efforts to police nakedness and decorum were attempts to transform diverse colonists into representative Republican citizens. Yet necessity, class, practice, and gendered labor ensured these efforts remained incomplete. The struggle over bodily modesty thus reveals the Continental Army as a cultural battleground where refinement and necessity, authority and liberty, and private bodies and public virtue were continuously negotiated in the making of the American Republic. This concludes my video. Thank you. Have a nice day.